Okay, today we're going to start Vav Hamad Aleph 6a, right? And Nibailo asked the question: do we think Hashem we're able to learn Torah every day? Especially we're learning Mishar B'Beis Hamikdash immediately. Learning also for Shleima for anyone that needs, and it's the yard site of the Rebbe's mother today, right? For Shleima, my father, and for Talib and Menuch Bela. Okay, starts like this. Iboilo, Yeshiva has a question. Say the lachar afrasha mechapra elay mechapra. What happens if someone's bringing a carbon oila? And so how does he do that? He has to designate the animal for the oila. Could be a sheep or a sign, or right? What is oila? Sheep or goats, right? So he designates the carbon. And then he neglects another prohibition, not a prohibition. He neglects another positive command. So does it cover? Will the offering that he's about to bring cover the positive command that he just neglected right now, the new one, after it's already been separated? Do we say let's compare it to the sin offering. Comes to a sin offering, it only covers the sin offering that was from before you separated, the sin that was committed before you separated. You had to designate the sacrifice because of a sin. So when you designate it was because of a sin. So but if he sins again with something else, then that chatas doesn't cover it. So we'll say the like this sign here thing is making me crazy. Yes, I don't know if you see his picture up. And Josh, can you see his thing? No. Okay. So he's got like a fake picture that's like rocking back and forth, like of himself. It's like an AI picture. Okay, so do we compare it to a chatas? Do we compare it to a or not? Do we compare it by a chatas? It only covers the sin from before. Maybe we shouldn't compare the carbon oila, the burnt offering, to the chatas, the sin offering. The chatas I'll call chet v'chet the chatas, because the carbon chatas you have to bring an individual chatas for each and every sin. But a carbon oila covers many sins. It's a different story. If someone neglected a passing many, he only has to bring one. So you can't compare it. After the fact of what?
That he separated, so how was it?
Because he didn't offer it. When he offers it, it's going to come. Right. Okay, so that's the Gemara's question here. So Tashma, so come listen. It says v'samach v'nirtza l'chaper. It says that he should lean his hands on the sacrifice, and it will be an atonement for him, an appeasement, an atonement. It says v'chismicha mechaperes. 1 second. Putting your hands on it is the atonement. It's the halayan kapar bedam. The atonement comes from sprinkling of the blood. The blood that's in the soul, that's the atonement. So what does it mean? He leans his hands on it and then it's an atonement. What does that mean? That if he doesn't consider the leaning of his hands a significant mitzvah, shiri mitzvah, says, it's an extra mitzvah. It's not necessary, and therefore he doesn't do it. So then it doesn't atone and it does atone. Which says, well, what are you talking about? My love, what do you mean it atones? It doesn't atone, it atones. The keeper, asay the kain mafresh. The keeper, asay the smicha, the havali asay the lachar mafresh. What it means is that there's a positive command that he was supposed to lean his hands on the animal, and he didn't do that. So he brings a sacrifice without leaning his hands on it. So it's an atonement for the sin that he committed, what he designated it for. But for the sin, the neglect of the positive mitzvah, that he didn't lean his hand on it, it doesn't atone for. Turns out that he should really be bringing another one for this time that he didn't lean his hand on the animal. Why? Why doesn't it atone for it? Because because this is a positive command, which was after he designated the animal. So you see, it only atones for sins that were done before the designation. It says, let's see. Say the smicha that I said lachar afrasha. Okay, it's not going to atone for it. Amar Rava says to this, who was the one that was talking here? It's just the stem of the Talmud. Yeah, this is the stem of the Talmud. I was thinking, let me see who's on here. Okay. I was thinking that the Ibailahus, there's a theory that the Ibailahus come from a later, at the end of the Talmudic period. But it's not, it doesn't fit with this Gemara because Amar Rava's much earlier. Rava's coming in and responding to a teretz that they're giving to Ibailahus. It doesn't fit with that. Ibailahus are much earlier. Okay, Amar Rava, I say the smicha kamret. You're telling me that the atonement doesn't cover that. Say the smicha. Shani Hasim the kol kamad leishachet b'amim samach kai. Shani Hasim. It's a totally different story. When does he have to fulfill this command? Up until the moment of shechita. When does he violate it? Amos kahavi asay. When is there a violation of this like a neglect of a positive command? La'achar shechita. That's only after this, till the moment of shechita, he has the command that he should be, the positive command that he should be leaning on it. When is it considered that he violated it? At the moment after the shechita. It says the moment after the shechita. La'achar shechita lekami bailan. No one ever asked the question here, should the karban be an atonement for sins committed after the shechita? Because this sin was only committed after the shechita was performed. Until then, he was just commanded to. It's not considered that he neglected it until the shechita was performed. So now it's a sin that it's actually simultaneous. But the Gemara is not getting into that. Okay. Amalei Rav Huna bar Yehuda l'Rava. Rav Huna bar Yehuda says to Rava, how do you know that that's the pshat in this whole Gemara? The whole Gemara is telling me that the smicha, there's no atonement for the smicha. Ema kiper gavra. Let's learn it differently. Let's say that keeper v'loi keeper, when you said over here it's an atonement, it's not an atonement, which like what does that mean? It's a square circle? What does that mean? So keeper gavra, it's an atonement. It was saying is that it is an atonement for the person. Who knows? It will cover him from getting any punishments that should incur because he did a sin. However, like keeper kamishmaya, but he's still not really accepted in heaven. So what this would mean is that he has his everything covered, but it doesn't mean that he's really like fully back in place, fully atoned for. Sometimes people do legal things that you can't really get them into trouble, but everyone knows that that's not you weren't supposed to do that. There's things like that. So here it's saying like he has his things covered. They can't arrest him on this. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that he has a full atonement from heaven. Yeah, everything's from Shemayim. Saying Kamishmaya means that he doesn't have the full atonement. It's not really like accepted like an honored guest.
people know they don't cover it.
No, but here we're saying that the heavens won't punish him anymore. He won't get punished. He's exempt from punishment. He's got his things covered, but it doesn't mean he's an honored guest in heaven. That's what we're saying. Okay, Milay Tanan, was it not taught in the Mishnah? Milay Tanan was not taught in the Mishnah. It says in the Goyim, "Vanoise b'shem asher al kaf Goyim lechaper alav lifnei Hashem." What happens over here is that in the purification process of the Mitzvah, so there's oil that's put on his thumbs, and then there's oil that's put into the Mitzvah's here, onto his head, put into his head. So what's left over from the oil after it's put into his thumbs, he puts it on the Mitzvah's head. So l'chaper lav l'fnei Hashem, as an atonement in front of Hashem. And now the Mishnah says, "Im nasan kiper, im lei nasan lei kiper." If he puts it on, it's an atonement. If he doesn't put it on, it's not an atonement. Divrei Rabbi Kiva, that's what Rabbi Kiva says. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, Shiarei mitzvahin. These are just remnants of a mitzvah. Bein shalei nitin keeper. Doesn't matter if he puts it on, if he doesn't put it on. It says what's left over. It sounds like it's not a significant... that it doesn't have to be done. It means if there's stuff left over, you put it on. It means if it doesn't put it on, so it's okay. It's as if there was nothing left over, so you don't have to. Keeper. Umalan olav kilo like keeper. However, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, but we consider it like it's not an atonement. This is my kilo like keeper. You just told me it is an atonement. You told me you don't have to do it. Now you're telling me malav like keeper. So how does that work? So he explains, do you have to bring another jug of oil? So keeper. He told me that it doesn't matter whether it was placed or wasn't placed on his head, it's already an atonement. Ella keeper gavra. It must mean that the person, he got his atonement. However, like keeper kap mishmaya, but in heaven he's not really atoned. It means he's not considered an honored guest in heaven. Is sort of accepted, but not perfect. Bachanami keeper, yeah, don't give him a chair. So Hachanami, so by us as well, we'll say keeper chulu. We'll say the same thing. Gemara says, how do you know that that's the pshat? Hasamnami keeper matan bahinas, like keeper matanai saroish. Maybe you can learn it differently. Maybe over there's actually two parts. Maybe there's a part that you're supposed to put on the thumbs, this part that's supposed to put on the head. He didn't do anything for the head. Maybe what it means is it's atonement for the part that he did. And it's not an atonement for the part that he didn't do. Yeah. What does this leave us with? What does that leave us with? So if we would say Kapish Maya, then trying to figure out if it covers, if an oila will cover an offering after the designation of it. We try to bring a proof from smicha. It says it's not an atonement for the smicha that wasn't performed. He said, no, maybe that's not the pshat. Maybe it has to do with, it was considered an atonement. We're not discussing the smicha. Smicha is after shechita. We have a totally different pshat over here. Keeper gavra.
Because it has a deadline.
Huh?
Once you shecht it, it's over. This has no
Right.
this had no deadline, and it's still not the same scenario, same outcome.
Right. Okay. Whatever the case is, we don't have an answer yet to what happens for extra sins that were performed after the designation. Okay, Tashima, come and listen. Reb Shimon Aimer. Shimon is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. It's going to be significant soon that it's Reb Shimon that's saying this. Shimon says, Kivsei Atzeres Lamahim Bain. What are the lambs that come on Shavuos? What do they come for? Like, which sin do they atone for? It says, Kivsei Atzeres Shlamim Ninu. Why are you asking what sins they come for? They're not even sin offerings, they're peace offerings. They come together with the loaves of bread, the 2 loaves of bread. Ella Seirei Atzeres Lamahim Bain. There are two goats that come, and this is like that whole discussion over there. You know, on Shavuos, you add in Chasam in this game. No, not by the Ushnei Seirim L'chaper. That's what we say by Shavuos. We say Ushnei Seirim L'chaper. We add in because there's one goat that's mentioned in Sefer Vayikra, I think in Parshas Emor, and there's another one in Parshas Pinchas. It's mentioned. And these 2 goats. It says, what did they come from? What do they come from? They're chatas. So what sin are they covering? The Gemara answers, Al Tumas Mikdash Kedasha. They're coming for, this is a Tosefta in Shavuos. I think we had this in Shavuos. They're coming for Tumas Mikdash Kedasha. In Shavuos we had a whole discussion about contaminating the temple. If someone's impure, he comes in or he eats from the holies, or he walks into the temple when he is impure. So Nizrak Daman Shel Rishon Sheni Lamakarav. The Mishnah asks, the Tosefta. So 1 second, once you sprinkle the blood of the first one, why do you need the second one? Why do you need 2 sacrifices to atone for Tumas Mikdash Kedashim? It says Al Tumas She'ura Bein Zelazeh. It's coming to tell us if there was a new sin that happened in between, right after the first sacrifice the blood was sprinkled. Now you sinned again, so we have a second one. What do you want to do? Every second you're going to bring another sacrifice just in case something is happening? You bring a well, this is what kind of, how's that going to work? The Torah was compassionate on us. We don't have to bring sacrifices every second because just in case another one happened. 1 second. This is a big problem. You're telling me that it's going to atone for a sin that was performed after the first one was offered, right? But it was already designated beforehand. See, it's coming to atone for a positive command. Let's say, is this a chatas or a naila? I thought this year more chatas. This year is a chatas. Whatever the case is, we're saying. Let me say, there is an assay that's here also. There is an assay, but Tumas Mikdash Kedashim has an assay, a positive command and a negative command, because it says you should send out of the camp anyone that's impure. That's a positive. So if this is an atonement for that, so it's going to cover the positive. It's going to be an atonement for the positive command. Now the problem is that it's lachar afrasha, because it was already designated yesterday or 4 days ago. I think they watched the sacrifices 4 days or something. So it had to have been designated beforehand. So it's fine, but it was like wiggling on it. So here, there seems to be a proof to the Gemara's question. If you can bring, if not a sin offering, if a oila would cover a sin that was performed after the designation of the sacrifice. So the Gemara says, 1 second, let's take a look at this. You're right. If they were designated both at the same time, and now you're expecting this to cover a sin that was happened after the first one, then you have a good point. This would be a proof. It's a gesund. But we're talking about that you designated one, and that was brought on Shavuos, and then on Shavuos itself you designated a second one. It says, so what do you want to do? You want to establish the pasuk that the pasuk is only talking about a case where one was designated and then the day later this one was designated, and that's what the pasuk is talking about. Is that how we're going to have to read the pasuk? Otherwise, you wouldn't bring two sacrifices. It's only going to be if it's in this obscure case like this. Rav Papa says, 1 second. You're getting carried away over here. There's karbanis tzibur kamret. We're talking about communal sacrifices. Shani karbanis tzibur deleiv best in kamasna aleim. When it comes to communal sacrifices, we have a rule that the heart or the intention of the court that designates sacrifices makes a condition about them. Now, Rashi over here says like this. I want to read it inside. See a Rashi that says leave Bezdin? That's Rashi, Josh. Leave Bezdin. It's one line down from the wide lines. Rashi says, who's the Bezdin? So skip the word ham. It says, those that are involved, it doesn't mean the Bezdin. It means those that are involved in the community things, they make a stipulation. That even if the Kayanim did designate the sacrifices at simultaneous, the second one shouldn't be considered a separation, a designation, until shortly before it's brought. As I know he separated it, but there's a stipulation there that it's only considered separated a moment before it's offered. That way it will cover before. You're asking me a whole question that how is this going to work? It was separated in this, and you're going to tell me that it's only in a case where it was designated a day later and right before it's being offered. He says, no. It was separated before, but we consider it like it was designated right now. So we can bring it after, and it's not considered that it's la'achar afrasha. It's being after it was separated, after it was designated, it's atoning for sins that happened afterwards. We're not considering that it was separated earlier, and it's atoning for sins that happened after the separation.
They have like both of them combined, and like whatever this one doesn't cover, like the other one would cover. The one that we're comparing it to is not like that. They're just an off of one, and then
the question is, there's just one simple question that has to be answered. After you separate an animal for a sacrifice to atone for a sin, if another sin is committed, will it cover that as well? That's the question. So we have a source. So it says two animals were separated. And one of them is going to atone for the sins that were for before. One of them is going to atone for the sins that were for after. See, it works for the sins that are for after. So we're answering that no, because the second one wasn't really designated before. I know it was, but it's as if it wasn't. So we don't have an answer. We're back to square one.
I can bring you proof from last year. Sending them into the pen, you count 10, that one's Masher. Then you count the next 10, that one's a Masher. That one has nothing to do with the first. You can't say the second one could have also covered the first, because it's the second set of 10.
No. We're talking about a sin. We're not talking about 10 more animals. We're talking about a sin.
Okay, 10 more sins.
That sounds like a joke. I'll take 2 or something. Wasn't it something like that? The indulgences, something. So by the priest, they would pay for indulgences, and someone said, "I'll take two." Okay. So this is Rav Papa. Kabbalah Sibur. Okay. Kid Rav Yehuda Mishmuel. Like Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel. Dam Rav Yehuda Mishmuel. Kabbalah Sibur Sakin Meshchasen L'Mashen. It's the knife that draws them in, the knife of the shechita that draws them in to what they are, which means that even though they've been designated before, but it's as if they're only being designated now at the moment of the shechita, because there's it's a stipulation. Okay, Amr Rav Yosef Breid Rav Shmuel on the side on the let's see this Zion Rav Shmaya. You know the Kachim Masechtas, Zvachim Menachos. They have side of the Gemara. They have a Shita Mekubetzes, which is Betzal Ashkenazi. It's a stage in Egypt. What do you have? 6. No, number 6. Yeah, I see it. Numbers. Well, so it was a sage in Egypt. He was actually a teacher, Chavrusa of the Arizal. The Arizal was in Egypt. He wrote on Shas, he wrote on a lot of different Masechtas, but it's not put in the Gemara. It's only in these Masechtas that it's put in the Gemara. And it's also a different job. But he does in the other Masechtas is he collects from Rishonim that we didn't have access to. Some of the things we found later. And we like compare the way his version to the version that we have. But over here, he like edits a lot of the text of the Gemara, and he also quotes from different.
Is that why it's called?
No, you may have a Shina Neschais also, which I don't have, but you should have. You should have a Shita Mekubetzes as well. This is a Shita Mekubetzes. But the little look in your Hebrew text.
Oh, I'm looking on the wrong side. Yeah, I was on the
You
left
see
side.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a Shina Neschais. What the Shina Neschais is the new later Gemaras take from the Shita Mekubetzes, plus other manuscripts, plus other sources, and they tell you different versions of the Gemara.
That's what I saw.
I just have either what the Bach does or what the Shita Mekubetzes. The old traditional Gemara just does this. Okay. So the name of Rishmaya, Rav Papa. So this is Rav Yosef Breder Rav Shmaya. It says to Rav Papa, those Rav Shimon actually have this theory that the heart of the Bezdin could stipulate about when it's considered designated, and we'll have it only right before the actual sacrifice. Amar Rav Yidi Baravin, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rav Yitzchak, Rav Yechanan. Of all these sages, they all say in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, this one, in the name of that one, in the name of that one, in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, let's say there's leftover carbon tamids from the daily offering that's left over. The different Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, ain't niftim tmimim. They can't be redeemed until they have a mum, according to Reb Shimon. However, the Chacham niftim tmimim. According to the Chachamim, they could be redeemed even without a mum. Why? Because the Chachamim hold that there was a stipulation here that they made. If we need them, then they should be designated. If we don't need them, then we're not going to consider them not designated. I know that there's a consecration here, but it's fine. We'll sell it. We'll take the consecration off. We'll buy new animals, and we'll do it for that. But in other words, according to the Chachamim, there's a concept of a stipulation, and according to Reb Shimon, there isn't. And you're telling me this, what we're doing here is we're taking Reb Shimon at the beginning of this quote, this Tashma, we quoted Reb Shimon. We said Kivsei Atzeres. We said, no, not Kivsei, we're talking about Sirei Atzeres, the goats of Shavuos. Why do we have two of them? So one is to the atonement for the contempt. One is for what was done after the first one was brought. So, but how could that be? He said, because there was a stipulation. Reb Shimon doesn't hold to the stipulation. That's what we're holding now. It says void, and if you're gonna say, Rashi explains this. I'm gonna go back to learn this the way we didn't want to learn it. We said maybe what it means is that one was designated yesterday and one was designated today. It wasn't designated at all until it was actually being brought. It was designated after the first one was offered. Maybe we should learn it like that. We had a kash on this. So because the pasuk is talking about only in such a case where you but void, and if you're going to say it like that, Habaymini Reb Yirmiyah or Reb Zera. Reb Yirmiyah actually asked Reb Zera this question: Seirei atzera shekibel dam b'shnei kaisis, b'nizrik dam mishal rishon. Sheni lama huba. If I have the two goats of Shavuos that are the blood was received in two different containers, two different vessels. The first blood was sprinkled. Why is the second one? What do I need the second one for? It says Altuma she'ira bein zrika shalzeh lazeh. If there was any contamination that took place after the first one was offered to the second one. It says 1 second. My Gemara says nizuk damishal sheni lama graven. Let's say after the second one was offered, why is it brought on the altar? I think that's supposed to be taken out of the text. So the Gemara says, "Adkan like mi bay." Until now, there was Rabbi Yirmiyah's only question was, "Asay delacha shchita." He was only worried about if there was a neglect of a positive command after the first sacrifice was offered, after it was shechted. Because they're both shechted. Why are we sprinkling the blood of the second one? Then, the blood of the first one was sprinkled already. Why are you sprinkling the second blood? He said, well, maybe there was a sin. He says, whoa. This is after Shechita that there's a new sin and it's going to atone for that. That we never even asked. He didn't even ask that. This is a proof that it definitely covers sins that were performed, that were committed after the designation. If he's even saying it covers sins after the Shechita. Gemara says, Dilma imtim talaymar ka'amar. How do you know that was Rabbi Yirmiyah's question? Maybe Rabbi Yirmiyah's question was on everything.
How can you shech something and anything that occur afterward? What is this called?
No, the blood wasn't sprinkled yet. No.
But once it was sprinkled,
then it's over.
It's over. Yeah. So that's what the second sprinkle is.
Problem is that you slaughtered them both. You have them in 2 cups. You sprinkle one. Why are we doing maybe there was a sin in between. So 1 second. But the sin was committed after the slaughtering, and you're still going to be acceptable. We didn't even have a question about after the slaughtering. Our whole question was after the designation, would it cover it? The fact that he's asking this question means that for sure he knows that after the designation it covered, and his only question, the Gemara says, no, maybe not. Maybe his question was on everything. Maybe his question is, does it work for after the designation? And if you say that it does, what about for after the... And as we're making up an assumption of what, we don't know the beginning of the conversation to say that, for sure he knew this. Because maybe it was a question on everything.
Should it work for him? It's like saying, it's like, you can't do it there. You can't say I'll sin, but don't worry, I'll make tshuva afterwards. You say I'll do the shechita, and just in case they do sin afterwards, don't worry, I didn't do the blood sprinkling. Something's fishy here.
I don't know what Dr. Stein just said, but I hope it was. I'm sorry for my creepy emoji.
Let's say someone decides to give tzedakah. He buys an aliyah or something. He's gonna give tzedakah. Then he makes a lot of money. He says, "Oh, you know what? The tzedakah that I gave should be meiser on the money that I just made." I'll cover. That's sort of like what's happening. It's like that's a sort of question. It's like, let me like cash in on it. It's not a perfect example, but that's the style of the. Okay, we're holding by Yitzmar. Yitzmar is a statement of Amiraim. Try to keep this simple because it's highly complex, even just to figure out like the things. The Taida is a Thanksgiving offering, and one person had to offer a Thanksgiving offering because he was in prison or something, or he was went overseas, or he traveled over the desert, or he was ill and he recovered. All of these things is when they come back to land, they come back, they recover, they have to bring this Thanksgiving offering. It's a shlamim, it's a carbon shlamim that has a time limit restriction on it, and it also comes along with some loaves of bread, some matzah and challah. Anyway, so he slaughtered. It was slaughtered for. It was designated by one person, but it's slaughtered for someone else. It says kshera. No, I'm sorry. You have to skip the word kshera. Rabba Amar kshera. Rabba says that it's kshera. Rav Chizda Amar psula. Chizda says that it's invalid. Now, kshera means that it actually works. Now, the complication here is that 1 second. We learned before, and we learned in the Mishnah, that any time someone offers a sacrifice, and he has intention of a different sacrifice, we said that the sacrifice is valid, but it doesn't cover the person's pledge. He has to bring another one. Then the Gemara tells us that whatever you said about this sacrifice also applies to a different owner, the Shinui Kodesh and the Shinui Bailam, and we said that's the same halachas. If you change owner, it's the same story. It's valid, but it doesn't, or for the chatas, it's going to be invalid, right? So here, how does Rabbah say that it's kosher? And it covers the owner. 1 second, it was offered for someone else. You told me before that it's kosher, but it doesn't cover the owner. The owner has to bring another one. Kosher just meant that you finished bringing it. So Rashi explains. It wasn't shechted that someone else should get an atonement from it. It belonged to Reuven. And Shimon also had a taida. And it was slaughtered as if it's Shimon's taida, but not for Shimon to get an atonement for it. Do they write this? Do they spell this out in the? Take a look. Number 9. This does not mean that the Kohen slaughtered it with intention that it should atone for that other person. That would be a simple case of changed owner intent. Everyone agreed that the Torah does not credit to its owner. What happened here was that the Kohen slaughtered Reuven's Toda for the sake of a Toda that Shimon had designated. He intended that Reuven's Toda should assume the sacred qualities of Shimon's Toda, though it should remain Reuven's offering. Yes, it's a little crazy. At issue here is whether Reuven's Toda and Shimon's Toda are treated as two different types of offering, so that intention for the wrong one constitutes a change of holiness.
He didn't mix up the people. What does it mean, l'shem toida shel zeh? It's like one person had a carbon toida for one reason, and he had another toida for another reason, and they mixed up the reason, but then stayed the same.
So that's what they're quoting over here from this comment. They quote Birkas HaZevach. Very good, Josh. They're saying, what distinguishes the sanctity of Reuven's Toda from that of Shimon is the fact that each one was designated for a different salvation. For example, Reuven for having crossed the sea safely, and Shimon for having been released from prison. Since each person's level of thanks is somewhat different, the qualities of the respective offerings also differ in some small way. This offering Reuben's Teda for the sake of Shimon's Teda constitutes a measure of change of holiness. We're changing owners, and we're calling it a change of holiness. And this is supposed to make sense and fit in this, but I guess when you get into it, you can work it out.
They're both bench.
No, right.
Same Goma.
This is the old-fashioned kiddush. So when a miracle happens to someone, they throw a kiddush. This is the old-fashioned kiddush. Meaning a carbon taida. I think the Mishnah Berurah writes that if a miracle happens to someone, he's supposed to bring a carbon taida or something like that. He's supposed to designate a meal for the yeshiva. I saw this in the Mishnah Berurah.
Great new campaign.
Yeah. I should do. We should have like
Any miracles
sponsor
lately? Sponsor a meal.
The kaparis, we give the chickens to the yeshiva.
Yeah. That's just because no one else has a refrigerator large enough to hold it.
Or anybody who wants it.
That's geschlackte kaparis. That was a Yiddish expression. Geschlackte. Okay, so here we're dealing with a taida that was offered for another person, not for another person, but as if it's someone else's taida. So it's a machlekes Rabba and Rav Chisda. Rabba merksheira taida l'shem taida nishchata. Says, what's the problem? It's a taida. There was no change. Taida is a taida. Rav Chisda mer psula says l'shum shlamim didei nishchata be'inan. And I have to drop the word nishchata. L'shum shlamim didei be'inan. And what is the gimel? L'shem shlamim. It's supposed to be slaughtered for himself, not for someone else. Oh, well, Amar Rabba. Rabba says, Mina minallah. Where's what's my source for this? The Tanya was taught in a brisa. It says, B'sar zevach teida shlama b'yem akriv yasivchei. I have a pasuk. Pasuk says that the flesh of the carbon taida should be eaten on that day. That's the distinction between a carbon taida and a carbon shlama. Abachanan Mishum Rabbi Eliezer. Abachanan says the name of Rabbi Eliezer. This is going back to Rabbi Eliezer. Must be the Rabbi Eliezer, the Tana, Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanes. Bala Lamed is coming to teach us taida sheshachta l'shem shlamim k'sheira. If a carbon taida is slaughtered with the intention that it's not a taida, it's a shlamim. Now, a taida is a type of shlamim, right? So then it's still kosher because you're still under the same umbrella. Shlamim shenishchol l'shem taida, but if you have a carbon shlamim that's offered as if it's a taida, now you're going from the umbrella to the specific, and it wasn't that. Then it's psul, and that's basal. Ma hafrish bin zelazeh. Why is it you're making this distinction? Taida kriya shlamim. A taida is called a shlamim, but bein shlamim kriyam taida. Yeah. In the types of cars, let's say a Honda. Say, put it in my Honda. So it doesn't matter if you have a this or a that, a Civic or a thing.
Camry,
Right.
Toyota, Corolla.
But if you say a Civic, doesn't mean that it's a what's the van? The Odyssey. Doesn't mean it's not a right. You went from the general to the specific, so it's not called the other car. They're all called Honda, but they don't go the other. Yeah, you want me to use Toyota because you don't like Honda?
No. I didn't follow. You said you go from the general to the specific.
You can say.
But when you say Civic, that's a
That's a
specific.
specific.
Put it in my Jeep.
The Jeep, right?
No, he's right. He's right. They're both Honda. So one is this LX, one's XL, whatever. So if you say the last XL, then it doesn't mean the other ones.
Right.
If they just put in the Honda, it doesn't matter which brand, which model.
Right. Okay. So shlamim l'shem taida is psula. The Gemara learns like this: if you slaughter a shlamim for the sake of a taida, which you went from the general to the specific, which it wasn't that. So it's psula. Now, psula over here means not that it's actually puzzle, because we learned in the Mishnah that if it's slaughtered for a different sacrifice, it's not pasul. It's ksher, but it's psul over here means lo yolu labaylam l'shem chayv. It doesn't cover the owner's obligation. Invalid, and what does invalid mean? It doesn't cover the. So psula, it means invalid in English. So hataida l'shem taida. But look at this. When do we say that it doesn't cover the owner's obligation? That's only if it's going from a shlamim to a taida. But a taida to a taida, it's ksheira. The Gemara says, "My love, the chabre." Is it not that it's talking about when it's his friend's taida? When it says loy didei, no, it's talking about his own taida. Aval the chabre mai. So then, what would be by his friend? If it's referring to if he brings it to carbon taida for himself, for the wrong miracle that happened to him, he designated it for this and he brings it for that. You say it doesn't cover. No, for himself it would cover. What would that mean?
That break the change of order?
Yeah. The Jeff's comment. Is it a Toda or is it a Toyota? Okay. So Aval the Chavri Mai, what would be for his friend? Zula. Then it would be invalid. That's what we're coming out with. But it says 1 second. So why? This is the Gemara's logic. The Gemara does say, Adatani Shlamim. So why did you make a contrast when you wanted to say a taida for a taida is fine, but a taida for a shlamim for a taida is not fine? Why do you have to do that? Why don't you just say taida for a taida is fine if it's his own, but a taida for a taida that's his friend's is not fine? Why do you have to jump to a shlamim and say, oh, because it's a shlamim, that's why? Even in the taida itself, I could make this distinction. This is an adatani. In place of teaching this, you could have taught a contrast in the thing itself. Are you familiar with this? The Gemara does this often. Instead of making that distinction, you could have made a more closer distinction. Listening title to shem title, because shlamim for sure shlamim for the sake of a title is going to be possible. The Gemara answers shlamim l'shem title diday it's shichlei. No, we actually have a chiddush here. Even though it's his own shlamim, but he's bringing it for a taida, it's invalid, even though it's his own. I could have thought that a taida could be offered as a shlamim and it's perfectly valid. So too, a shlamim could be offered for a taida, should be for perfectly valid. It should be kosher. Kamash Malan comes to teach us, no, only if you do a taida for a shlamim would it be kosher, and a taida for a taida would be kosher, but not a shlamim for a taida, even if it's his own. That's the chiddush. When the Gemara uses this logic, adatani this, instead of giving me this contrast, you could have given me a bigger chiddush by giving me a contrast that's much closer, right? Yeah. Okay. Amar Rava says, chatas sheshachta l'shem chatas ksheira. A chatas that's slaughtered for the sake of a different chatas, it's kosher. Now, this would be someone did a sin, like he ate forbidden fat, and he brings the chatas as if it was for eating the blood. He brings it for the other sin that he committed. Shemaila psula. But if he slaughters it as if it's an ayla, that's possible. That's already psula, because like we learned in the Mishnah, korban chatas can never be changed into anything. We had an opinion that you can't change anything into a chatas, but it's puzzled entirely.
Wait,
my timer.
The first case where there's the chatas for the other chatas, so it says it's valid, but does that mean only it's valid for the second one, but the first one he still owes on?
That I would need to look at the notes. What I'm assuming is, what do the notes say? It's a good question. Chatas l'shem, chatas ksheira is valid 24. chatas brought to atone for the sin of eating forbidden fats was slaughtered for the intention to serve as a chatas consuming blood. This intention is not in any way, and the owner discharges his obligation with it. Delightful. They don't answer.
They don't answer.
Yeah, maybe he's. Let's see. Where are we holding? 7b,
Like
7a.
he still owes a chatas.
A sin offering that was slaughtered for the sake of another sin offering was obligated to bring. He was obligated to bring is fit, but if one slaughters, no, they don't say anything. What's n? For example, a sin offering that was consecrated to atone for consuming blood, so to atone for eating forbidden fat, is not disqualified, as this is not considered a change of offering. Rabbeinu Tam suggests that this refers to one person's sin offering that was slaughtered for the sake of another's sin offering. Oh, that's a bigger chiddush. That's not the way Rashi was learning.
Yeah, that would make
We were
more
learning
sense.
different. We were learning that it was the same person. The question is, what Dr. Stein is asking is that which one does it cover? The first one or the second one? The one that was designated for, or the one that was slaughtered for? We're not getting an answer from Rashi.
And these still owe on the other one.
Yeah,
Whichever
no,
one
you're gonna need to bring the other one.
You will.
Yeah, because each sin has its own chatas. The question is which one did it cover? Okay, let's assume that it covers the first one, the one that it was designated for. That's an interesting assumption. Or we could flip a coin and do it the other way. So, my timer, what's the reason? It says, the Eibishter says that you have to slaughter for a chatas, but a chatas Hashem chatas nishchata. And that's what I did. This pasuk taught me that if you don't do it for a chatas, it's pasul. This was the one that taught me that chatas is stricter than all other sacrifices. But turns out it's actually more lenient when it comes to this, because it tells me, oh, it was a chatas. Slaughter for a chatas, that's good. I didn't change. Okay, l'sheimayla psula, but l'sheimayla it's going to be a pasul. But Amar Rava has another statement. Here we're going to have a bunch of different statements. Rava says, chatas sheshachta al mishim mechuyev chatas psula. If you slaughter a chatas for someone else, that's mechuyev a chatas. That's invalid. Al mishim mechuyev oila is ksheira. Why? The first one is invalid because shinei bailam. Can't change the owners. What was Taisva thinking before? How did we change owners?
Before he was mafresh. I mean, that means it wasn't. Maybe he wasn't mechayev yet. I don't know.
Maybe. Josh, you're on the you had a good coffee this morning on the road. So could be actually, that's the pshat. So anyway, whatever the case is here, we're saying that if he slaughters it for someone else that has that has to bring a chatas, then it's invalid because it's shini bailim. You bring it for someone else that was supposed to bring a carbon, you're changing owners. But if the other person didn't even need to bring a chatas, he only had to bring an oila, then it's ksheira. My timer. What's the reason? Why would that happen? The chiper alav v'lei al chaverei dim yedidei. It says you have to bring it. It's an atonement for him, not for his friend. But what would his friend be? His friend that needed to bring a chata similar to him. But if he didn't even need to bring a chata, then we don't consider him his friend. So it's going to be a valid sacrifice for the original person. This first one, the chatas must be slaughtered for its own sake. It's only that a chatas must be slaughtered for the sake of a chatas. Not say the chatas must be slaughtered for the sake of a chatas. The particular violation is brought. Therefore, even if it's slaughtered for the sake of it's still no, the same vagueness. Yeah. So, here this is a chiddush. that chatas could be brought for someone else with the intention of someone else that wasn't mechuyev chatas and is still kosher. He was only mechuyev oila. Okay, now, Rav has another statement. Chatas sheshachta al misha ena mechuyev klum. Let's say the person wasn't chayiv anything, psula, then it's invalid. 1 second. He told me it's only considered his friend if it's mechuyev chatas. But not an oila. Now you tell me nothing becomes worse. It says shein lecha adam b'Yisrael shein mechuyev aseh, because every person is obligated. There's no one in the world that didn't neglect a positive command, right? The studying Torah, giving tzedakah. There's always neglect of positive. There's always something else that you could do. People say, "I'm doing everything. I'm doing." Yeah, right.
And if you are,
There's no such thing as doing everything. We're always doing, we're doing.
It's a loy shavik marchai lechol beria. You can't say that.
and even if so, you can still go.
Right, there's always more to do. But okay, so every person has a neglect of passive. Now, let's say, okay, so now this becomes very complex, because why did we say that now this person? Why is this chatas pasul? Because we said that the person really has to bring a oila. 1 second, but we said if it's for an oila, it's kosher. So why does it get worse? Yeah, I don't have the answer clear. The Gemara is clearly stating this. That if the person was mamish mechuyev an oila because he designated an oila, if the person had designated an oila, then he's not considered the friend of the one that has the chatas, and therefore the korban chatas is going to be valid. But if he never designated an oila, then the chatas would have covered it, and so therefore that's what's happening here. A chatas covers if someone has to bring a chatas, it would cover a sin, a positive neglect as well. It would cover it. And since he doesn't designate an oila, so the chatas could have covered it. So therefore he's considered. So when you bring it for that person that says, I'm not mechuyev anything, really he is mechuyev, does have neglect of positive, which therefore the chatas that you bring for him could have covered that neglect of positive, and therefore he's considered a friend of the other person, which he's not allowed to bring it for him. Okay. Rava says, this is a continuation of the last, that a chatas atones for a neglect of a positive command from a kal v'chomer. How do we know that it's from a kal v'chomer? If it atones for the strict laws, someone that gets excision or something like that, so for sure it atones for someone that neglects a positive command. L'meimra, this must mean, this tells me the basmino, that the one that had to bring the one that neglected a positive command is an associate of the one that has to bring a chatas, and you can't bring it for the associate, right? But Rava says, maybe you're supposed to read it like this: L'meimra de basmino. What do you want to say, that they're the same? But you said that for an oila, he's not considered the same type, and it's going to be kosher if you bring it, right? The Gemara asked the question. The Gemara answered, "L'kiva loy mechapra." It's not the direct atonement that is supposed to be designated. However, mikufya mechapra, it's only, I had this before once. How do we translate mikufya? What do you call it? Peripheral atonement. I had another word for it. Just 1 second.
It's peripheral agavorcha.
Yeah. Oh, here I have it. I had floating, incidental. incidental, floating. Kufs means to float. Rashi said before, tzaf, floating. Incidental is the word that I think the Koran used. Okay, it covers the, like derech agav, it will cover it, but it's not the direct one. Now, therefore, if someone had to bring an oila and he designated an oila, then he's different than the person that's bringing the chatas. But if he didn't designate anything, then the chatas will cover it. And so therefore, he's considered a friend of the other person, but you're not allowed to bring a chatas for someone else. That's similar. Okay. Rav also says, oila sheshachta shlei lishma, asal lizuk damar shlei lishma. Once you make one mistake in the sacrifice, if you sprinkle the blood wrong, then you can't, you slaughtered it for the wrong intention. You can't sprinkle the blood also for the wrong intention. You can't say, well, it's messed up anyway. You can't do that. Either this is based on a pasuk or it's based on logic. Say it's based on a pasuk, and they don't have suing in the Beis Hamikdash. But if there was a concept of suing, so then there would be no shaila here. You just throw it on, you sue for the next thing too. So it's mitzvah v'sechad tishma, that you have to guard the vow that you took, which means that you pledged this, so you have to continue to do that. You can't just change it. Ibay say masvara, or maybe we could say it's just logical. The Gemara says mishum deshani ba bulu kederesh pirka. Look at that. The Gemara doesn't have the patience to spell it out. It says we spoke about this before at the beginning of the parak. As we mentioned earlier on page 2, actually, we said that that just because you made one mistake, that means you should make more mistakes. Okay. Amar Rav also says, Eila balach misa. If the owner of the oila passed away, and the inheritor is bringing the oila, shachta b'shini kaidesh. If it was slaughtered for something else, not an oila, it's psula. B'shini bailem. But if you slaughtered for a different owner, then it's kshera. Dein bailem lachamisa, because there's no owner here anyway. Because the owner passed away. So it doesn't matter who you slaughtered it for. Rav Pinchas Breder Rav Ami Amar Yesh Bailem lachamisa. Rav Pinchas Breder Rav Ami says, not like Rava. He says, no, there is an owner even after death. Who's the owner? The inheritor. Amalei Rav Ashi Rav Pinchas Breder Rav Amir. So Rav Ashi speaks to Rav Pinchas Breder Rav Ami. He says, Dafka kamar yesh bailem misa bailasiya elachriti idil mediyaka kama asega be mechapra. Do you mean that you actually have to? Are you arguing with Rava that you have to bring another sacrifice if you messed up this one because you had the wrong intention, or are you just saying that there is an owner, and the person that's offering it will get his assays, his neglect of positive commands forgiven? But you don't have to bring another one if you brought it for the different person. Amalei Dafka Kmini said, no, I'm arguing with Rava. I mean that you do actually have to bring another sacrifice if you change intention in the owner. Amar Rava says, Oila Dairini. The Oila, the carbon Oila is a gift. It's not a, this is what the Alter Rebbe quotes in Iger's Tshuva. It's a gift. Hechidami. What do you mean it's a gift? Either like a tshuva, if you didn't do tshuva, zerach b'shem teva, we don't want your gifts. Sacrifice of a wicked person is disgusting. Either tshuva, and if you did tshuva, Vatanya Avral mitzvah sev shavli zaz misham an shemechlei. It says you do tshuva, you get forgiven immediately. It must be that it's a gift because you're forgiven already. So the gift is what you send after you give a gift afterwards. Okay, there's a siman here. This must be the siman for the statements of Rava. Rava had a bunch of statements. Chatas was the first one. Shachtal mishen mechuyev klum was the second one. Haper was another one. Mishen mechuyev chatas. Oh, they spell it out. Okay, good. Okay. Tanya Nami Achim is also taught in the Bryce from Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, Chatas lamaba. Why does a sin offering come? Why do you bring a sinner? Lama ba? What do you mean? Why do you bring a sinner? Lechaper, to atone. Ela lama ba lefnei oila. Why is it always offered before the carbon oila? You always bring the chatas first. It says lepraklit shenichnas. It's comparable. It must be missing a word here. I have a different version on the side, but it's still down to adding it. I would thought it'd say mushal. I thought it would add in a word, something like that. Anyway, it says the lawyer comes inside, the advocate comes inside, and he says why his client is should be pardoned, and then the fellow himself sends a gift. So first you have to get the be pardoned by the carbon chatas, and then afterwards you send the gift. Okay, let's go further. Putzmena Pesach v'achatas. We said in the Mishnah that every sacrifice that's brought for the intention of a different sacrifice is still valid, but the owner has to bring another sacrifice, except for a carbon Pesach and a carbon chatas. Pesach on the day of Pesach, on the day of Erev Pesach, when the carbon Pesach is brought, and a chatas the entire year. If it's brought for the intention of a different sacrifice, it's absolutely invalid. Pesach minolan, how do we know that a carbon Pesach is possible if it's brought for the sake of a different sacrifice? The ksiv shemar schedeshav v'sisa Pesach. You should guard the spring and you should make the Pesach. You call a siyas of shem Pesach. Everything has to be done for the sake of a Pesach. V'sisa Pesach. You should make it a Pesach. Any other intention? Invalid. Ashkan shina kodesh shina b'aylam minolan. So far, I only know if you change it from a Pesach to something else. How do I know if you change owners? That it needs to be slaughtered for the sake of a Pesach. Well, that doesn't tell me a different owner. However, it's not a problem. We're using the concept of Inyan. Teaches me again the same thing that I knew already, that you can't change. So if I don't need it to teach me that, because I know it already, I can use it for something that I need it for, which is you can't change owners. Ashkan mitzvah. You're only telling me that this is what you have to do. But la'akiv, but it should be invalid if you didn't do that. Minola, and that, how do we know that it's actually invalid? That you should slaughter Pesach. It says it again for Hashem your God. That means that it's going to be invalid. This extra pasuk. The Gemara says, "Maskefler Rav Safra." Rav Safra has a question. You think that pasuk that you just quoted is teaching me that it's invalid if you had the wrong intention? That's already been spent. You use that pasuk on something else. Rav Nachman says the name of his father-in-law, How do you know that if there's an extra carbon Pesach, you're allowed to bring it as a shlamim? Sheep and cattle. What do you mean? You slaughter it from cattle. Sheep and cattle. It's only sheep and goats, right? Male sheep, male goat is a carbon Pesach. Mikan, what it means is the Meiser Pesach the davar haba min atzeinim min bakar ma'nir shlamim. What it's doing is it's alluding to that what's left over from a carbon Pesach is brought for something that's another sacrifice that's brought from sheep and cattle, or tzayin is not just sheep; it could be goats. Tzayin means flock and cattle. And what carbon is that? It's referring to our shlamim. So our question now is, why are you telling me that V'zavachta Pesach is coming to tell me that it's ma'akiv if it affects the validity of the sacrifice with the wrong intention? So what are you telling me? I use that pasuk for something else, that you offer it as a shlamim if it's left over. Rav Safra says, Zavachta Pesach lichti Rav Nachman. You're right. Zavachta Pesach, that's being used for Rav Nachman, that you use it as a shlamim. Shemar Chedesh Aviv, but when it says that you should guard the spring, the month of the spring, lemitzvah b'shini kodesh, that's coming to tell me that there's a mitzvah not to change what type of sacrifice it is. B'martim Zevach Pesach, when you tell me that to slaughter it as a Pesach, that's b'shini b'aylam lemitzvah. That's just telling me that you can't change owners. And who is le'akev bein hachalacha? B'martim Zevach Pesach, who? The pasuk hu is coming to tell me whatever we said until now is ma'akev. Ashkan Zvicha. So far, you only taught me about the shechting of it. What about the other Aveda Shar, Avedas Minal, and what about the other things they have to do? Catch the blood, sprinkle the blood, walk it up to the altar. It says Hayel v'gali gali. Once it's revealed that this is the halacha that you can't change, so it applies to everything. Rav Ashi Amar Hayel v'gali v'gali, Hayel v'gali gali la yamrinan. We don't say gali gali. We don't say that. Gali. Yeah. Okay. What is it?
Jim Neighbors.
No, there was an Israeli song.
Zoom
Zum
Gali Gali.
Zum Gali Gali Gali. Zum. I don't know. I have no idea what that means. But yeah.
This
Okay.
Gemara maybe explains it.
Okay. Rav Ashi Amar Hayel v'Gali Gali la yamrinan. El Avedis Minan. So according to Rav Ashi, if that's what you want to do, so then now you're losing out the source for everything else. So he says, this is the laws of all the different sacrifices. The pasuk says, "V'tanyan," it was taught in the Brayso, "B'nei tzavasis b'nei Yisrael lahakaves karbaneim."
Oh, Gali means to roll. It rolls from one application to the other.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm asking about the song.
Oh.
I don't know what the song is. No, over here, gali means to uncover.
Oh, like I looked.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it meant to roll over from one to the
El
other.
v'gali, once it's uncovered it here, gali, we have it for everything. That's what I understood. So the Brayso says, "B'yom tzavasis b'nei lahakaves karbaneim." What's it talking about? That's Zebachar, U'Maiser, Pesach. Those three sacrifices. Kishvar Kasav l'shlamim. They're compared to the peace offering. Ma shlamim ben shina kodesh ben shina bailam binan lemitzvah. Afkol ben shina kodesh ben shina bailam lemitzvah. I know that you're not supposed to change shlamim to any other sacrifice. Same thing applies to the other sacrifice. Ubeshlamim, ukeshlamim, and now we compare back to the shlamim. Ma shlamim bein tzvicha bein shar avodas. Just like by the shlamim, it doesn't matter if it's the slaughtering of it or any other services. Lechalakta ben lemitzvah, it doesn't matter. You're not supposed to change it. Af Pesach leitachal bein tzvicha shar avodas la'akev. Also by the Korban Pesach, where it's not just a mitzvah not to change it, but it affects the validity of it, but it's going to apply whether to the shechita or whether to the other services. Elohu lamali. Then what do I need the pasuk of who? According to this, I'm skipping the parentheses. Kedetanya was taught in the Brayso. Nemer Pesachu b'shchita la'akev. Avalashim lei nemer bohu. It says by the Korban Pesach, it says who, and that's coming to tell me that it's ma'akev. But by the Asham, it doesn't say who. It only says who after the limbs were offered on the altar. It's coming to tell me that by the Karban Asham, if the limbs were not offered, the Asham is still valid. And the Gemara is going to discuss this later on Daf Yud. There's going to be a machlekes between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yeshua regarding this. Okay, let's leave it right here. We're up to Chatas. Bottom of the page. You see that? Okay. Have a good week, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day.
What's the current status of Israel?
Second, I lost this. Let me do this. Ramesh is off. Okay, we'll talk.